Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be on my path to CRNA, why I chose it and how long it took me, the steps that it took to get here, and it's just a long, lengthy process, so bear with me. Yeah, well, let's just get into the nitty-gritty. So if we're gonna start way from the beginning, let's talk about when I finished high school. So after high school, I was trying to decide what major I should go with. I still hadn't decided. I was in leaning toward architecture school, but I thought I think I would prefer the health sciences. So in the end, I chose to do the pre-dental track with a major in biology. And yeah, so I did that. I graduated in 4 years in the year 2012. My GPA was trash. It was, I don't even think it was a 2.7, but anyway, it was horrible. I don't know what I was thinking, like if that was going to get me into dental school, but I tried anyway. I applied for 2 years because I said, hey, you know what? I know I'm not going to get in, but I can't say that I'll regret it later. You know what I mean? Like I was like, let me just submit these applications and say that I did, because that's really what I just spent the last 4 years attempting to do, right? So it wouldn't be a complete waste of my time, but it was. In that time, I was retaking classes, hoping to boost my GPA, but I had so many credits under my belt with such bad grades that no matter what I did, how many A's I got, it was barely making a dent in my GPA. But I retook probably, I want to say 4 or 5 classes, maybe even 6. But anyway, neither here nor there. This was all in the process of me applying to school and trying to figure out what to do with my life, because I had a bachelor's degree and I wasn't using it. I was working at a family business, and it wasn't like I hated it, but I just knew that I could do so much more. You know, I just felt like this is not what I went to school to do. I don't know, it just wasn't where I wanted to be. So I had to really think and figure out what I wanted to do. My sister kept trying to convince me to do nursing, and I just was adamant against it, because all you hear when you think of nurses is that you're wiping butts. And granted, I'm not saying I'm beneath wiping butts, but I felt like, again, I had so much more in me than that. You know, I just wanted to be able to have autonomy and make decisions. And as a nurse, you know, not saying I hate it, believe me, I'm not saying I hate it. I love it, and I still love it, and there's nothing I would change about the profession as far as what we do. But, you know, I just felt like that's not where I wanted to be, right? That's what I said after I had my first bachelor's degree. Then, in the year 2014, I witnessed a dog get hit by a car. And the dog wasn't, you know, badly mangled. It was just a broken leg. So I took the dog to an emergency vet, and they said that the tack he had was, the number was disconnected, so they were just going to euthanize him. The snoring? Yeah, that's my older dog, just so you know. Okay, so I refused to let this dog be put down for a broken leg, not knowing what journey I was going to be in for or what it was going to entail. But I took responsibility for the dog, paid for his vet bills. Later found out I have a friend that's real connected in the dog world. She made a GoFundMe for me after I told her what had happened, and there was multiple donations pouring in. So much so that all of this, the whole journey, was not even much of my own money. So he ended up requiring surgery that he needed to stay in the hospital for 3 weeks. So in that time, they had me come in and teach me how to change his dressings for his wound on his leg, because he had an external fixator. I'll insert a picture if you guys are interested, but viewer discretion advised. It kind of was rough to deal with, but it was painful for him, so much so that they had to sedate him in order to do the dressing changes in the beginning stages when it had first happened. So they said normally they wouldn't have me go and watch the procedure, but they wanted me, I guess, to see the extent of his injuries. So they took me to the back, they put him under, and they did the dressing change, you know, I'm watching them do the dressing change because in the end I'm going to be his caretaker and I need to know what to do. But more so it was like I was watching these vet techs put this dog to sleep for, you know, a procedure that otherwise would have been very painful. And there was little to no apprehension from the dog. Like, you could see some variability in his heart rate, but, you know, when it got to the real painful parts, you can tell the heart rate went up. But, you know, I was just shocked that, you know, this could happen, you know, in this way, and he's just out, like completely out. So this was where it sparked for me anesthesia and how amazing it could be. You know, it could get people through the toughest parts, the most difficult times, surgeries that are required. Yeah, like it just, I don't know, I was shooketh, if you will. And I didn't even think about it because I had had surgery maybe 3 months before this whole occurrence, you know, and I got put to sleep for my surgery, and I didn't think twice about it because, you know, it's like you go in surgery and then you wake up. You know, this is the second time I had been in surgery. I had my tonsils removed when I was 18 and my gallbladder when I was 23. So, you know, you just don't even think twice about it. I just, at the time, didn't realize what really happened because I was the one on the table. But when I was watching them do this for this dog, I just got this whole new fascination for it. It was just like, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do. And in the meantime, too, I had to do all his wound care. I had to give him meds around the clock, which was difficult, especially for a dog that didn't like treats. He was the pickiest dog in the world. And like, I didn't know him. Like, I just found this dog on the street. So I didn't know what he was into. I didn't know what he liked. Turns out, too, that the dog was deaf, and it said that on his tag. So it's like, I couldn't even like figure this dog out. Like, how am I going to get him to take these meds to, you know, clean his wounds, especially when it's painful. So it's like I became his caretaker on the clock. And it was a lot. You know, he required a lot more than what I thought he would require. I took him in for his second surgery, which was to repair his hip because he had a broken leg on one side and a dislocated hip on the other. So when they repaired his hip, he had some complications, had to take him back. They had to put a drain in. It was a lot. It was a lot. But in the end, he did recover from that procedure, but it was the same thing over and over again. I had to treat his wounds. I had to medicate him around the clock. So I was his nurse, and it was fulfilling to see the process because I had never had to deal with someone that was ill, you know, like having to care for a loved one. I had never yet had to deal with that. So it was cool to see him get better with time and like walk more, start running more, start, you know, doing things independently because I used to have to carry his whole bottom half when he would have to go to the bathroom. So it was fulfilling, it was rewarding, it was treacherous, it was rough all in the same time because, you know, you're watching this poor little animal suffering, and it was my doing because in the end, if they would have put him to sleep, he would have been put out of misery. But I couldn't be the one to make that decision, especially since it wasn't my dog. Again, I just met the dog on the day that it happened. So after 5 surgeries and 10 months of recovery, I even had a rescue come and help me take care of him for about 5 months. So about half the time I took care of him, and then half the time the rescue took care of him, and then we ended up finding him a home. So, you know, yes, it was a beautiful love story, if you will, but it taught me a lot. It taught me that I do have what it takes to be a nurse. I do have what it takes to, you know, put my mind to something because I was so lost. You know, it was like almost like it fell in my lap, and that's so mean to say because it was in, you know, his suffering that, anyway, it put me on a path. I said, okay, I was really intrigued by the anesthesia portion of his care. I want to be a nurse anesthetist, but in order to be a nurse anesthetist, like I looked it up, it's a process. You know, you have to become a nurse first. You have to get years in ICU experience. And I was willing and ready to do that. Like, I was 24 at the time, or 23, like about to be 24. And I was like, I'm gonna do this. This is exactly what I want to do. This is the year 2014. So I looked into a school nearby. They told me, okay, yeah, you can apply. We just would like you to take this intro to healthcare course. I was like, no problem. I'm ready. I took it, and they even had us do a paper on careers in the field of like healthcare, because it was a intro to healthcare course. So I said, okay, this is the best opportunity for me to do research on this profession that I'm about to try to embark in and try to get into. So I wrote a research paper on it, and the more I looked into it, the more I researched it, the more I wanted to do it. It was like, this is me, this is who I want to be, this is what I want to do, this is exactly what I need to do. So I had in my mind since 2014, this is the path that I'm going to take. So I applied to school. I got accepted in 2015, and I started an accelerated nursing program, and it was only a year. It ended up being a little more because of a little hiccup I dealt with in life, and that's okay, that happens. So I finished in the year 2016, and I took my RN license 2 months after in 2017, and I had a job already lined up before that. So no pressure, but it was contingent on passing the boards. So once I got my license, I was able to start working. So in March of 2017, I started working. And the thing with that was that I wanted to work for a particular hospital. I was being very picky, and I refused to work med-surg. I didn't want to work med-surg. And I wanted to work at a particular hospital as well. So I said, whatever opportunity they give me, hopefully not med-surg, I'll take it. And I'll put in my time, and then I'll move on to an ICU, because I feel like I have what it takes and I'm ready to take it on, and I need that in order to go to school. So the position that was offered to me was in mother baby, and I asked, how long do I have to stay before I can transfer out? And they told me I had to be there for a year off of orientation. There's the hitch. I thought it was 1 year, but it was a year off of orientation. So my orientation was 4 months, by the way. So at the 1 year, 4 month mark, I was already putting in for a transfer, but I had nowhere to go. So I was also finishing my BSN online. In the meantime of that, I was looking into where I can do a leadership clinical, because it couldn't be in the unit that I worked for or the hospital that I worked at for conflict of interest reasons. So I contacted my clinical educator, and I said to her, I want to work in an ICU, or I just want to shadow in an ICU for my leadership clinical. Can you make that happen? And she said, okay, I'll reach out to my contacts, and then she got back to me, and she's like, hey, I have someone in NICU that's willing to let you shadow them. It's at a nearby hospital, one of the sister locations. And I was like, perfect, I'll go. And I said, if I do what I think I'm gonna do, which is try to make sure that they know that I'm not here to just waste time, and that I'm gonna help out, and that I wanna learn, that maybe they'll offer me a job. And lo and behold, within the first day, they did. They offered me a position, and I told them, okay, but I can't work in the same institution that I'm doing clinicals at, so it would have to wait until after clinicals, because I had to sign a conflict of interest form. And they said, okay, when do you finish? And I finished, it was a full semester, so it was like 4 months. And they said, okay, not a problem. Once you're finished, we'll do the transfer. So as soon as I finished, I was now at the year and, was it 6 months? Yeah, a year and 6 months. They put in the transfer, and I transferred over to NICU, which was, in my opinion, the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I met some really great people there. Not saying that I didn't meet good people in Mother Baby. I did meet a lot of good friends that are still friends. It just wasn't the unit for me. I just felt like I could do so much more. And although fun and happy, it just wasn't where I wanted to be. So in NICU, I learned a lot, and I tried to do everything with intent and absorb everything that I could like a sponge. I asked for the hardest assignments, and I was learning all in the back burner. Like, I was doing my own studying because I wanted to take the CCRN, and I knew that I could take the CCRN if I had 1,750 hours, which was a little shy of 1 year of work if you work 3 shifts a week. So I was like, okay, I can take this test in a year. 4 months into being in NICU, I was realizing our sickest patients were getting transferred to another hospital, and I was like, I think I need to be at that other hospital. So I applied for a per diem after 4 months of working in NICU. I got the job and I worked there as well on the side. And what I liked about that hospital is that it was a different patient population. It was still NICU, but it was just things that we normally wouldn't see. This hospital was a non-delivering hospital. Well, they were trying, but anyway, they would get patients that would get flown in, and they could be coming from the islands, from other hospitals that weren't equipped to care for them, so on and so forth. So the acuity, I would say, was a bit higher, but more chronic. But what was great about it is that I was used to a certain patient population, so getting the two types of patient population and like seeing things that I normally wouldn't see, I felt, in my opinion, broadened my horizons when it came to NICU, and it helped me when I took my CCRN. I took my CCRN about a year and 3 months of being in NICU. I was studying for it when I had just hit 1 year. I was studying for it, and then my dad passed away, so it kind of like, you know, slowed things down, but I still was ready and I was willing, and I caught up, and I took the test in January of 2020. So in that time, I was like, all right, let's start applying, because I had my CCRN, I had my letters of recommendation already lined up, I had my experience, I had already 1 year under my belt, which is the minimum for most schools. So I started doing my application process. So I applied to my first school and I got an interview. I was like, oh my God, like this school is down the street from my house. I got an interview. This is my first application cycle, and being that I had just had a terrible GPA on my first bachelor's, it was like, nah, there's no way on my first application cycle. Okay, I'll take it. So I did the interview, and I learned a lot from that interview. I learned that, you know, they can ask you anything, but in this particular interview, it was more of a personality type. And you know, when you're so nervous, you don't show your best face, you know, you're just like, you know, trying to be cordial, trying to be like, you know, what do they want to hear? And I don't know, I just felt like I couldn't really be myself, but oh well, it was what it was. And afterwards I ended up getting a rejection, which was fine. I learned from that experience, and I realized too at the time I wasn't ready. I was not ready to start school, and COVID was about to start, like the pandemic was starting, so I don't know if maybe it would have hindered my school experience if I would have started like in the midst of COVID, you know what I mean? So maybe it was just better, and this is all me trying to rationalize why things happen. But anyway, then I applied to another school and I got rejected like within the day, and I called like, what's going on? Like, how come I got rejected so quickly? Was it anything missing in my application? I felt like I met all the requirements. And they said that the GRE, they wanted all the scores in the 40th percentile, and I had one score that was in the 37th, and I was like, oh, it's because I didn't really know what they were asking in the math portion of the GRE. I didn't understand how they asked their questions. So later I actually took the time to figure out what they were asking, how to answer the questions, and I did much better the second time around. So anyway, so I was like, okay, if I want to apply to that school, I have to have all my scores in the 40th percentile, which is not horrible. It was just that I went into the first GRE without studying at all, because that test is like, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it enough in my other videos. But so that application cycle, I was only able to apply to 2 schools, and I got rejected from both, and I learned from the experience on both of them. And I realized, okay, for the next application cycle, I'm gonna have to change it up a little bit. I'm gonna have to change up at least what I had from last year, because I need to be different. You know, I can't just apply with the same credentials and hope that I'll get the same result. So I asked in my unit if I could work in the transport team. That's where we pick up babies from hospitals that don't have the care available for that particular patient. So I felt like it was a good experience. That way I can deal with events in portable and learn on the go. You know, it was not always high acuity patients, but dealing with high acuity patients, keeping them stable throughout the transport, and then transporting them to the hospital, like the receiving hospital. It was, I don't know, felt like that would look good on my resume. So I started that in August of 2020. And then I also joined the PIC team in my unit as well, where we put in PICs on the babies in the unit that require central lines. And I know that as a CRNA that you have to put in lines like A lines and other types of monitoring devices. So I thought this would probably help me in my practice. Maybe not, you know, because most of the patients that we deal with in anesthesia are usually older than neonates. But hey, if I could put a PIC in a neonate, I could put a PIC in an adult. Maybe not. But anyway, that's what my thought process was. You know, if I could put a central line in a baby so small that it would only correlate to being able to do it as in a larger population. So I thought, okay, I think my resume looks good or better than the year before. I improved my GRE. Let me apply again. So I applied to the same 2 schools and I got rejected, not right away, but I got rejected from those schools and another one as well. So 3 schools, and I ended up getting rejections. And then I applied to another school that actually had rolling applications, which was rare for me to notice because most schools is once a year. You start in the spring of the following year. So I thought, wow, this school is probably going to be it for me. You know, it was a bit farther than I would have liked, but it had the rolling application and the school was actually not far from where my mom is living. She moved away 2 years ago. So I was like, you know, this is a win-win. I can hang out with my mom. It has a rolling cycle. So if I don't get in now, I can probably apply for next year, so on and so forth. My rational process sometimes is like, I guess I will do. So I applied, I got an interview, and they told me, well, first off, you won't get an interview until you take chemistry because your chemistry is too old. They wanted it within the last 5 years. So I was like, okay, let me take this chemistry. Kind of thinking like, man, if I don't get accepted into this school, that really would suck for me to have to take a class that, I mean, there was one other school that did require chemistry within the last 5 years, so it would have helped for that one as well. But I was kind of thinking like, man, I hope I'm not wasting my time. But in the end, they gave me the interview and they gave me the acceptance, which I was shocked because that interview, in my opinion, did not go so well. My first interview the year before was much better than this one. This one was more clinical based and they asked me a lot of adult questions. They tried to correlate it with, you know, the population that I was accustomed to seeing, but I was like, wow, this interview is not going so well. So I followed up with an email answering any questions that I felt I didn't answer properly, or there was one entirely that I said that I would get back to them. And I didn't want to lie. You know, if I told them I'm going to get back to them, I'm going to get back to them. So I sent them an email thanking them for their time and then also reinforcing a couple of points that I mentioned in my answers for some of the clinical questions that I was just kind of rationalizing in my head, if you will. Like I was like, I don't know this, but this is what I think would be. And then one that I didn't answer at all, I answered it there. And then yeah, I got some good feedback about my follow-up email, and I'm not sure if that's in the end why I got the acceptance, but I am so eternally grateful when I tell you that I ugly cried when I got the email of my acceptance, because all of it, you know, was finally happening for me. I started this journey in 2014 when I picked up that dog, and it's here now. You know, I'm starting my 3rd week of CRNA school. And granted, I have so much self-doubt because I feel like, you know, my GPA from my first bachelor's degree, my GRE wasn't so good, my level of experience wasn't so good, because some, you know, some people don't view NICU as experience for ICU. So I just felt like as a candidate on paper, I don't look like the best candidate, but I know in my heart that I am. You know, I have what it takes. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to this point. So that says a lot. And I'm hoping that the school sees that, because I feel like I'm a little bit under the microscope because of the NICU experience, the GPA. You know, it was almost like they went out on a whim to accept me into their program because, granted, I'm sure there was a lot of competitive applicants. And I'm not trying to talk down about myself, but I just feel like my own self-doubt and my own, you know, apprehensions to why I feel like I wasn't the greatest candidate are kind of like still haunting me. But I'm gonna prove to myself and I'm gonna prove to them that I'm a worthy candidate, that I have what it takes, and I am so grateful for this opportunity. I hope this long, lengthy, horrible video gives you hope. As far as if you're starting your CRNA journey or if you want to start your CRNA journey. I'm probably going to do a video on why I chose CRNA versus nurse practitioner in the next couple of weeks, but I really hope this video helped you. I hope it wasn't just a waste of your time, and I did mention that it was going to be lengthy, so you can't get upset at me for that. But that's it for this video. Just telling you guys from where I started to where I'm at now and how happy I am to be here. I hope you like this video. Give it a thumbs up. If not, I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye!